once I started getting to know them and started renegotiating what they do and don't do, I was able to authentically be me and I was able to lead.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 394 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and hope you're having a good week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. So I'm looking forward to you hearing from my guest in this particular episode, Rachel Bentley. And, one of the things a theme that comes up a lot, in the years that I've been doing the podcast is just the correlation or just kind of the connection between the clinical work we do and how it affects us in our business and the business side of things. And so in this particular episode, Rachel and I jump into talking about IFS, internal family systems, and how our different parts play a role in how we run our business or how we run our practice. And so it's an interesting way of thinking about things, and it comes up a lot, I think. I know, just in my own clinical work and also in my own personal work, just really recognizing how all of those things kind of overlap, and our mindset and the stories we tell ourselves and all of those kinds of things about how we run our business. So looking forward to you hearing from Rachel. Another thing that comes up a lot is just the importance of mentorship when you're running a practice. I know for me, having a mastermind group that I'm a part of and being able to find some trusted colleagues to kind of walk through and navigate all the different pieces of running a private practice has just been well worth my time and investment in those kinds of things. And if you're interested in doing some mentorship or some coaching with me, I'd love to do that. So if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com, and if you'll click on the link there or on the button there that says coaching and consulting, you can find out more about that. I'd love to have an initial conversation with you just to see what your needs are and how we can work together. But getting more and more people interested in that, and I'd love to have that conversation with you. So again, go to the website, practiceoftherapy.com, and click on that button that just says coaching and consulting, and you can find out more about that. And also, before we get to my conversation with Rachel, I'd love for you to hear more from one of the members of the Psychcraft network, along with a word from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hi there. I'm super excited to welcome you back to the brand new season of Scaling Therapy Practice podcast. This is the show where we encourage you to take deliberate steps towards sustainable growth. I'm your host, James Marland. In season 2, we're specifically focused on one main topic: marketing for mental health providers. Every week, we're going to share about different parts of marketing, giving you simple tips and tricks to grow your mental health business. Every episode from season 2 will have a download or a handout from the show. So sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss these valuable resources. Good news, I'm not going to be doing the show alone. I've got some awesome friends who are going to be joining me from the Psychcraft network. You're going to hear from Lisa Mustard, Steve Bisson, Dawn Gabriel, and other special guests. We've joined forces for this season to share helpful advice on things we've learned and even the mistakes we've made so that you don't have to make them. As the weeks go by, listen to us cover lots of topics on marketing, such as social media, how to market your own therapist, how to speak in public, and even how to start your own podcast or even just guest on podcast shows. We really want to hear from our listeners, so send us your questions, your comments, your thoughts to james@coursecreationstudio.com. That's james@coursecreationstudio.com. Make sure you check out season 1, which is out now, and it has lots of tips on scaling your therapy practice. Just go to coursecreationstudio.com and click the podcast section. So join us every Monday. We're going to learn a lot about intentional and sustainable growth for your therapy practice.
Rachel here with a quick shout out to TherapyNotes, the EHR that Gordon uses and loves for running his group practice. If you've ever been looking for a solid, all-in-one platform to manage your notes, scheduling, billing, and even secure client messaging, this is it. Gordon's been using TherapyNotes for years, and it's honestly made a huge difference in how smooth things run behind the scenes. He's always saying how it saves him time and keeps everything organized, and as a practice owner, that's huge. And get this, they've just rolled out Therapy Fuel, which is an amazing suite of AI tools that help write your notes faster. You can generate progress notes from session summaries or even from transcriptions. You can also create contact notes straight from secure messages and automatically summarize client history forms. Basically, it's like having a little documentation assistant built right in. Plus, TherapyNotes is always adding new features like automated payments, secondary insurance billing, and a growing library of outcome measures. And if you ever get stuck, their customer service is phenomenal. Seriously, you can call or email 24/7 and talk to someone who actually knows what they're doing. So, if you've ever been thinking about switching or just getting started, now's a great time. Head over to therapynotes.com, click Start My Free Trial, and use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. All right, back to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm really glad to have on the show Rachel Bentley. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you for having me, Gordon.
Yes, and Rachel, some folks might know Rachel from Next Level Practice, but Rachel, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Yes, absolutely. So again, thank you for having me. I started out back in 2019. I was working in state government and had been for several years and was really getting burned out in that system for various reasons that we can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to start my own solo private practice. And it was a leap of faith. I was scared to take that leap. And so I did it in a very calculated way. I started the practice very part-time on the side and remained in my agency job. And things began to evolve. My caseload got full in that part-time capacity. And this eventually led me to leave that job, which was my goal, and start developing a group practice because I started noticing there was a lot of need, and I had referrals that I couldn't take myself, and decided to get on that group practice journey, which I could say a ton about, but it's been quite a journey over the last 6 years. And today we are a group of around 40 clinicians. We have been at that number for the last few years. I don't intend for us to get bigger in number, but lots of, as we know in practice ownership, especially with a group this large, lots of trials and tribulations, lots of challenges. And I started having folks come to me and ask me, and maybe this has happened to many of us that are consultants, could I pick your brain? How did you do this? How do you do that? Like all of the questions, right? How do you sustain a group? What do you do around hiring? How about billing? It turned into like, can I pick your brain became more and more frequent. And I was like, Zoom and in coffee shops and just really trying to help people with little nuggets of growing their practice. And I realized I'm a clinical supervisor too, and I'm a teacher at heart. And so I love to empower and help people, but I needed to put some boundaries around the picking
Right.
of the brain, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to develop my company Next Level Private Practice really so that I could think more about like who are the folks that I want to help in consulting? What does that look like? What are those offerings? And really just to put some boundaries up for myself, for my own sanity,
Mm-hmm.
because I was
Mm-hmm.
already working really hard as a clinician and a supervisor and a practice owner. So what does this consulting piece and side sort of look like for me? So that's essentially how Next Level was born.
Mm-hmm.
Really as a result of the ask from my own community. So
Right.
that's how that
Yeah.
unfolded.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that story sounds very familiar, and that's much of the same thing that happened to me as well,
Mhm.
in starting the practice of therapy. And so, yeah, it's
Yes.
evolved, and yeah, just the same kinds of things.
And I don't know
Well,
that I didn't
yeah, go
set out.
ahead.
I don't know if you set out to be a consultant, but
Mm-hmm.
it kind of it evolved out of that need. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Hmm. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and too, like you, I love being able to help people with those things. But yeah, like you said, setting some boundaries around that, and being paid for your time. Your time is worth a lot with the knowledge that you have.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that we lose sight of that sometimes, like the value of
Hmm.
our time. And I know in the beginning, especially with consulting, I was very caught up in well, I just want to help people. And like people would email me and say, hey, can you answer a quick question? But really, the questions were like an hour talk.
Hmm.
And trying to differentiate when can I answer a quick question versus when do I say, hey, that's
Hmm.
actually a consulting hour, and just
Hmm.
trying to navigate that whole thing.
Right.
I think that's a whole other
Right.
talk, but like I
Sure.
it was challenging, right? It was challenging to
Sure.
figure out how to do that and how to
Yeah.
put the value of how much you charge and things of that nature.
Hmm.
It was really like a
Right.
whole new world. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
yeah, whole thing. Well, I
Yep.
know one of the things we were talking about before we started recording is just how you've been able to kind of incorporate or do incorporate kind of your clinical thinking with what you do with your staff and what you do with yourself and all of that kind of thing with using internal family systems, IFS. And so tell us your ideas around that and how what you've learned.
Yeah. So the just to give a short context about the IFS journey, I didn't know a lot about IFS several years ago. The model started blowing up post-COVID because it was the first time folks could access IFS training in a virtual format. And so
Hmm.
the training just blew up. It's incredibly popular. There's a wait list. It's very expensive. There's so much around accessibility to getting trained in the model, but which is a whole other thing. But I was led there through becoming EMDR certified. I was in EMDR consultation, really trying to get that model down. And I had a consultant say, like, you need to do parts work with this person before you move forward with EMDR. And it was this moment, like, well, what's that? What do you mean? And so it led me to research IFS and eventually do the IFS level one training. And I was a little frustrated, Gordon, because I was like, well, I've already like trained in this other model and paid all this money, and now you're telling me I have to go learn it. So that's really why I learned the model so that I could help my EMDR folks, just for a little bit
Hmm.
of context, because it's a little
Right,
bit of a
right.
wild story.
Hmm.
So I go into level one not knowing a lot about IFS, and you go to any training and you think, oh, I'm going to go listen to lecture, I might do some practicing, and I'm going to be taking notes, and maybe I'm going to tune out some of the time because how much information can I take in an 8-hour day? But what really happens in level one is it's a lot about getting to know yourself and your own parts. And it's a lot
Hmm.
of discovery around if you haven't thought about yourself through a parts framework, it's really getting to know yourself in a new way. And it's very, very, very vulnerable.
Hmm.
And you're very vulnerable in front of a group of therapists, which is it felt even,
Hmm.
harder. And I learned so much about myself and like the parts of me that come up when I'm in situations like this where I have to practice or perform or where I don't know what I'm doing. This is a new model. Like, this is
Yeah.
like slipper. This is like, oh, like what comes up for us. I think about what comes up for new therapists that we're trying to mentor or train when they first get started, what comes up for us when we don't feel like we know what we're doing. That was like all of level one for me. And it was
Mm-hmm.
actually a really difficult, intense time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much of the model I actually learned because I was learning so much about me. But fast forward to doing a lot more consultation training in IFS. And also, I have to name, because I think it's so important, I don't know how much we name this in the therapist circles, the importance of doing our own work. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot since, and I've done a lot of therapy in my life, but since becoming trained in the model, just I've been a client in the model with an IFS
Mm-hmm.
therapist, and it has just been so incredibly helpful in every role that I play. And so I can't say enough about it, about the value of the model. And so, would it be helpful for me to transition a little bit into how that's shown up in my own clinical work or as a
Sure.
leader?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started noticing, I guess, as a group practice owner, I started noticing that there were things in my practice that I was sort of avoiding. One of those was high conflict conversations with my team. And when I say high conflict, I just mean like hard convos, right? Like someone is
Mm-hmm.
not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or any sort of conversation that brings in conflict or where people can really challenge you. I noticed I was avoiding those conversations,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't good for business. And
Right. Right.
and I
Yeah.
realized there was like this sort of people-pleasing part that I had in my system that wanted more than anything to make everyone in my group happy, to make everything peaceful, and that really wanted to create an environment that was different, that wasn't a CMH or a system or a state government or an agency, but that was a place where people were respected and felt valued. And right, I really wanted to, which I do hope, Gordon, that I have
Mm-hmm.
created that.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
there wasn't balance. It was all, there's this people-pleasing part of me that wants to make everyone happy, and therefore I'm not addressing some of those issues that I should be. And so that was one of the first things I noticed after IFS training. And I really had to get to know that people-pleasing part of myself. And part of the model is, well, why do these parts do what they do? Why do they show up when they show up? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and IFS says, well, they show up to protect you. But the key is like, but what are they protecting me from? What is this people pleasing doing for me? What is it actually protecting me from? And I had to learn like so much about that. So that's like one good example of how a part showed up as a practice owner. And clinically, as a therapist, we really start to notice and we can talk about it like it's transference and countertransference, but when we start to really think about, we have certain clients in the room with us and we might feel some activation. We might feel anxiety or fear, or maybe we're tuning out. Maybe we're getting bored. I mean, we hate to admit that this would ever happen, but it does,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But we start to notice, like, I started noticing moments as a clinician where I wasn't completely present and really connected and really tuned into my client. And so I started getting really curious about, why is this happening when it's happening? And like, what do I do about it? But I was just like so much more aware, like, Rachel, you're getting knocked out of that presence that is so important when certain clients are in the room. And so what do we do here? And IFS just helped me like think about that really explicitly and just be so much more aware of
Mm-hmm.
when my part showed up in that, in what I sort of call the therapy chair. Um,
Right.
so that
Right.
was so transformational as well. And I also use a lot of the concepts in clinical supervision, and I ask my supervisees, well, what are you noticing is happening? And it's okay if you're activated, because guess what? We all get activated, but
Right.
we have to get curious about it, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to try our very best to be as present as we can and hold space for our clients. That's what we do. So if we're not, we have to figure out why.
Right.
So just some examples of how I've infused the model into my work and also in my consulting with other practice owners and identifying
Mm-hmm.
some of their parts that are coming up. And I'll name some of mine and they'll go, wait a minute, you have parts
Mm-hmm.
come up? And I'm like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
When we're
Yes.
running practices and we're managing people and we're leading, a lot of activation is going to come, especially when things aren't going well or a curveball is thrown our way. Yeah.
hmm Right, right. Well, yeah, I'm grinning because, it's interesting how that you mentioned the people pleasing.
Yeah.
I've recently started with working with a new therapist for myself, and
Mhm.
that was one of the big things I said. I'm a recovering people pleaser, and
Yes.
so that's the thing that I need. I need to be more and more. I need to really tune into that work for myself and
Hmm.
recognizing how it has, the depth you mentioned parts, just how does that come out and what is it that brings that up in me and what is it, what's the purpose it's serving for me? And yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's just really fascinating stuff. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
On hot summer days, I keep my makeup simple. Dewy skin, a touch of highlighter in the corners of my eyes, and just enough to feel refreshed without going fully glam. Thrive Cosmetics makes that easy. I swipe on their Liquid Lash Extensions mascara and instantly look more awake. It lasts all day without smudging, even in the heat, and comes off with just warm water. I love that their products are vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean ingredients. Plus, every purchase supports communities in need. Knowing my go-to mascara also helps others, that's beauty with purpose. And it's why Thrive is always in my summer bag. Maximize your look with minimal effort. Go to thrivecosmetics.com/beauty for an exclusive offer of 20% off your first order. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/beauty.
Yes, and I noticed that one of the first part that I really kind of labeled as a part for myself or got to know was what IFS sort of calls the inner critic. And I think we all have the inner critic. We all have a
For
version,
sure.
but it would
hmm
be this part that would come up kind of right here in this ear, and it would kind of just like relentlessly, why didn't you get this done? And why didn't you do this quicker? And
hmm
what's wrong with you? And it has like a, who do you think you are? Like, why do you think that you can do all these things? And
hmm
it sometimes and some people will experience like the voices of people that were critical to them in the past sort of morph into their own inner
hmm
critic. Like I hear my
hmm
mom, criticizing me in my head. It's super common with a critic, but I started at first, I remember in therapy, because one of the things we ask in IFS is, so how do you feel toward this part? Like, how do you feel toward it
hmm
when you actually know it's there? When you think about your people pleaser, it's like, how do you feel toward that people pleaser? How I felt toward my critic was like, well, I hate it. Like, I don't want it around.
hmm
I don't want some relentless voice in my head bashing me when I make a mistake. And I remember my therapist saying, I think there's a part that like hates the critic, right?
hmm Yeah.
Right, because
Yeah.
our parts will like ping pong or elicit each other, and some of our parts work together, and some are in very different camps and are in opposition of each other. And I thought, wait, what do you mean I have a part that hates the critic? And my mind was like blown. But
hmm
in getting to know, to actually connecting and getting to know this critic, I realized this critic's been around a long time. Most of our parts have historically been around a long time, and its role is to like sort of stop me in my tracks so that I don't fail, so that I don't make mistakes, so that I don't be vulnerable. I mean, it has a really harsh way of doing it, but it
hmm
feels like if it brings all that to the surface, that I will stop. And if I stop, if I don't move forward, say with an idea or whatever, I won't fail at it. Because
hmm
it fears a lot about me failing. Because when I fail, then that means I'm not good enough, right? So there's like,
Right.
so it goes deeper down into the dirt, like down into those like negative core beliefs. And once I realized like that's what it was trying to protect me from,
hmm
then I could have more compassion toward it. Like, oh, I get
Right.
it. Like, okay, I get you. It's like, here's me talking to my critic. Okay, I get you. I get why you're
hmm
here. I
hmm
understand you now. Like, you think if you say these things to me, it kind of reminds me of like sometimes in like the coaching world with athletes where you have coaches that are like uber, uber critical that somehow
hmm
motivate the athlete to do better.
Mm-hmm.
That was my parallel with my critic. I was like, I see what your strategy is.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
get that, like, in some ways that could be effective, but it's also harmful. It's also hurtful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of IFS, like the journey, is getting to know your parts really well and then having them trust you and having them trust that, like, okay, I can put my foot out there and be vulnerable and I might fail, but it doesn't mean anything bad about me if I do. And once they can start to trust that, then they can, it's almost like you can renegotiate what they do and what they don't do in your system. You have a lot more choice about what parts lead when, if that makes sense. So
Right.
it's so freeing to like connect and get
Mm-hmm.
to know them. And it's also very different than a lot of the ways we're trained because we're often trained to teach clients to like kick your part away, kick your part down the road, stop it,
Mm-hmm.
tell it to shut up, put it on a shelf, put it in a box. And
Right.
in a lot of models, we're actually taught to push our parts away, not to embrace them and get to know them. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why this model has been so amazing for me because once I started getting to know them and started renegotiating what they do and don't do, I was able to authentically be me and I was able to lead, which is
Right.
just, I feel like is such a gift.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And it's just, I was trying to remember, I think I've been recently been using the Calm app just to help with sleep and all that kind of thing. And,
Hmm.
it talks about, it was one I was listening, a meditation I was listening to recently, just talking about and it was around going to sleep and the fact that you're awake is to be able to, is just embrace that you're awake
Hmm.
rather
Hmm.
than trying to fight, okay, I need the awake to go away. Well, let me just embrace the fact that I'm awake, you
Yes.
know?
And maybe even add in IFS, we'd say, well, let's get curious about the awakeness.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, in theory, like, we're supposed to be sleeping right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Right, right.
curiosity around, like, what is awakeness about for me right now? Do I
Mm-hmm.
have like a narrative of worry running, or is there some
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, or am I super stressed, or am I just,
Mm-hmm.
like, but what the curiosity around that, yeah, like embracing it that it's here. Now let's get to know it a bit, right? I'll say to clients
Mm-hmm.
when they have trouble sleeping, well, I wonder what was stopping you from sleeping. Like, was there a voice in your head, or did you have pain in your body, or like, what do you think? Let's get curious about what stopped you from that sleep
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus like, okay, take some sleeping meds and don't look at screens. And not that like sleep hygiene isn't good, but
Uh-huh.
but getting to
Mm-hmm.
know the parts that keep us awake are,
Right. Right.
there's so much value. It's sort of a different way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, sure is. Sure is.
Yeah.
Well, in thinking about how this has affected your leadership style and just working with your staff and your practice, what has come up for you?
Well, people will say to me often, like, wow, you just show up in the room. I definitely try to. That we learn in IFS is like, how do we show up authentically? We have to be what we call self-led. So IFS uses this term like self or self-energy. And self is made up of these, IFS calls them the eight C's. So things like clarity and confidence and compassion and calm. But if we have some or all of those elements and we can notice, yeah, I feel calm right now and I can have a lot of compassion for what you're saying versus judging you. If we are self-led, we just typically are better leaders, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're leading from our authenticity, from who we really are, not from parts of ourselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I noticed with my team is like if the people pleasing was showing up, which it was, or some other examples would be I had this part that was really afraid to overburden my staff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to give them too much because again, I didn't want them to feel like they felt in those systems like CMH and such.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't necessarily giving them enough work to do. So I
Uh-huh.
had this like guilt about giving them too much. So I wouldn't give them enough, right? There wasn't balance with that. Things
Right.
weren't balanced. Everyone, oh, Rachel, you're such a great boss. You're so nice. You're great. But in some instances, it also meant that I guess what I would say is I was kind of a pushover. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was taken advantage of in some cases by some of the folks that worked with me or around me. And I was too nice, so to speak. That too
Mm-hmm.
nice part was up.
Mm-hmm.
I could give lots of examples, but what I would say now is just because I know my parts pretty well at this point, and it's not perfect, I still get activated and they still take over sometimes. But I'll notice, like in meetings or in interactions with my team, I'll notice, like when I get knocked out of self energy, I'll notice it and go, there's a part here right now that's either criticizing or wanting to people please, or the perfectionist. I think we all have a
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist comes around.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I'll notice that. And sometimes it's funny because, like in our meetings as a team, I'll say, all right, so I have this part of me that really wants to people please right now and really wants to care give right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, everybody, let me recenter. And they know. They're like, okay. So I'll name it. I'll name that the parts are in the room for my team. And I'll say something like, because we're all to some degree caregivers as therapists, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't want any of you to take care of me around this right now, but I just have to name there's a part in the room, name it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
recenter, right? And I invite them to do the same. Or if I can see that like a part of them has taken over, I'll say, let's pause for a second. Like, well, let's just take an inventory of what might be happening inside for you right now. Gordon, people don't always receive this really well. They'll be like,
Yeah.
don't, don't parts
Yeah.
work me, don't do. But I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like really, like if I know that this isn't like you talking, this isn't like who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering, like, can I support you right now? Like, if someone, let's say someone gets really angry and they start sort of coming at me in an angry way, I might say, hold on, let's pause for a second. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would be easy for me to get angry too, or for it to
Mm-hmm.
elicit me to shut down, or because parts elicit parts in relationships. And so for me to be able to just go, let's pause for a second, it seems like there may be something happening for you right now. And I'm wondering if we can pause and get curious about it. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always go super well in that moment.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, it's
we're doing
yeah.
that versus just starting to go at
Yeah,
each other.
sure, sure.
Yeah.
I heard recently from a friend that learning the difference between being nice versus being kind.
Yeah.
And being nice is more about people pleasing and trying to appease and all of that sort of thing. Whereas being kind is being more to the point and more direct, but doing it in a kind way and not doing it in a
Yes.
demeaning way and that sort of thing. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that's been something I've been thinking a lot about here recently as well. Yeah.
And I think there's the middle ground between being so harsh and critical, like some of us have experienced from leaders we've worked for or with,
Mm-hmm.
and then being a complete like so nice that you never challenge anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that comes up for me is like when I have to make changes in the practice, and I no one likes change, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
will say things to the team like, I know that change is hard, but I need you all to understand that it is my job to hold the big picture of this practice. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about profitability. There's a lot of things I have to hold and think about. And sometimes I'm going to make decisions that you all don't agree with. And I'm happy to hear your feedback, but I have to hold all of that. And because I
Mm-hmm.
do, there may be things that you don't like that happen. It's not like you,
Mm-hmm.
or, this isn't. And I'll say statements like that, and people are just kind of like, whoa, whoa, I didn't think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Like, you are the one holding the big picture, and you are
Mm-hmm.
the one who's responsible to make sure that we all had jobs for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is kind for me to just say it. I mean, it's direct and it's true. May not agree. Um,
Right, right.
but that
Yeah,
is the nature of me being in the seat that I'm in,
yeah,
right? And I'm
yeah.
just very like upfront about that. Where
Right, right.
before IFS, I may not have been as direct about that.
Yes, yes, yes. I know.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, this is such great stuff. And, Rachel, I guess we better be mindful of our time. I know you've had a long day of doing webinars already as we're doing this, but one of the things I do want you to mention is you've got a conference coming up that you're sponsoring and leading. And so say more about that.
Yes, so with my consulting company, Next Level Private Practice, we are hosting the Next Level Private Practice Summit in the fall. So we're going to be doing this in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the end of September 2025. And I will say me, the reason, because people are like, why are you doing a summit? Like, this is a lot of work. We're gonna have 30 speakers and CEs and all of the things that I think people will want to come for. But to be honest, the reason that I created the summit is because I often crave connection and community with folks that do what I do. And I've really
Mhm.
tried to seek out retreats and conferences and summits and events that I can attend. And I've attended many where I can meet folks, right, and have that
Mhm.
community. So I personally want to bring people together for that connection and community. But I know that's not the only reason people may want to come.
All
I
right.
know that people want answers to their private practice questions answered. I know that people want CEs. I know that people want to hear a new perspective from new speakers. And so we're going to have all of that happening. And the other piece of it is I really want to invite everyone in private practice. I want our solo owners represented. I don't think that they're always represented at all of our events, and
Mhm.
they can be pretty isolated. They're working, solo. Our group owners, of course, like me, or maybe just people that they're in an agency or a system and they're really wanting to enter into private practice world, but they have all these fearful parts, like maybe you and I had when we started our
All
practices.
right. Right.
So much fear around billing and all these different things, finances. Maybe those people want to come too just to get exposure to the world of private
Mhm.
practice and all of the ways that we talk about it and think about it. So we're really going to be trying to balance or really infuse business aspects of practice, clinical aspects of practice. So we're trying to have something for everyone, Gordon. And again, my mission is to bring all of us together and give us a place to connect.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
What's the website that they can go to find out
yeah,
more and
so if folk,
register?
yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Mhm.
So you can find us at nextlevelprivatepractice.com. And on the website, there's a banner right at the top of the website that leads you right to the summits page. And it also can give folks a glimpse of some of the other things that I offer in consulting there on the website. But I would love for folks to go check the website out and check out our summit. I'm excited about it. It is talk about parts in the room. Try planning your first, because I've had successfully had some retreats and smaller events, but to plan something this big, lots of parts in the room, Gordon.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited, and I'm excited for the folks that will be there with us as well.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, great. Well, we'll have links in the show notes and the show summary, and of course for people to find it. And Rachel, golly, this has been a great conversation, and the time's just flown by. But
Yeah.
we'll be in touch again, and hopefully we'll have another conversation here. Well, a big thanks to Rachel for joining me on the podcast. And do check out her summit that's coming up at the end of September. And again, there are links here in the show notes and the show summary, nextlevelpractice.com/summit. I believe that's the correct URL, but check in the show notes here just to make sure that's correct. But yeah, I just really appreciate Rachel and just the thoughtfulness that she's put into thinking about the different ways in which we run our practices. And she did bring up a really good point, just the importance of community. I think that's, again, like I said at the beginning, I think that's one of the themes that it just keeps coming up, is just the importance of getting friends and colleagues that are trusted friends and colleagues, and mentorship and coaching and all of that sort of thing is just so vital to running a private practice. So be sure to check out her things. And also, as I mentioned, if you're interested in working with me and doing some consulting, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. So again, you can go over to practiceoftherapy.com and just click on the link that says coaching and consulting, and you can find out more about that. And also want to say a big thanks to TherapyNotes for being a sponsor of the podcast. They are one of the leading electronic health record systems for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and absolutely just love all the features that they continue to add and improve. in particular, as we are hearing more and more about, is the use of AI, particularly with doing our clinical notes and all of those sort of things. It's just been such a huge time saver and does, I think, really helps us out a lot in just streamlining things. But be sure and check them out. Go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and use that promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. I think you're going to like them. So anyway, thanks again for joining me in listening to the podcast rather. And do take time to subscribe or follow the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, and tell your friends about it. And if you feel like they could benefit from it, always looking for great guests and just new topics and that sort of thing. And we're plugging away here to almost our 400th episode. So just put a little bug in your ear. We're going to see a little different look from the podcast, or a little different sound from the podcast with that 400th episode. So stay tuned for that and come back for more. Take care, folks, and hope you have a great rest of your week or weekend. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience and their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.